Have you ever felt out of power? I have things in my life that I feel give me power, and I think I'm really fooling myself. If I look in my pockets, I have things that I think, I own this. Here's my car. I'm the only one that has a key in this room of my car. And if I look, I have probably, well, Emily might have a key to my office, but I have a key to my office and to my house and to a very special bank. So I have power. And then when I think about it, I think, oh my goodness, I think I have something in my other pocket too. Look, I have a wallet. Do you know I have at least 2 or 3 of these credit cards? And they have power unless someone cuts it up, unless I spend too much money. And I also have power because I can drive, and I belong to America, and I belong to the state of Oregon. So that is good. And I have $36.45. So I have lots of money to burn, and I have power through money. Sometimes I feel that this world kind of says, you know, we need to give you power. I think a lot of times that's why my sister actually gave me something else. She said, hey, whenever you get lost, here is something I want you to take just inside, in case you're inside of a wilderness. She says, you can actually have a flashlight, and you can have scissors, and you can have a knife. You can have even something to pick your nose with. That gives me power. And I would say, no, I don't think so. The world says that power is wonderful. And yet when I think about power in this world and what I need, I think I miss the point a lot of times. Within this world, I think that we would be aspiring to something that maybe Christ didn't use at all. And yet he was a man of power. We live in a world that is enamored with power. It usually measures power by wealth and by influence, by position and status and physical strength and appearance and intelligence. Sometimes I think that most of us think that we can gain power just if we're famous or if we're beautiful or if we're knowledgeable. Power, I think, if misused, can oftentimes lead not only to false notions of who we are, but what we believe. It is my understanding that the way we use power in our lives determine about who we are and how we're remembered. Is that right? So, I think it is easier sometimes when we want to be like God and can have lots of power. It's easier to try to be like God than to love like God, isn't it? And sometimes it's easier to try to control people than to love people. And sometimes it's easier to try to own life than to actually love life. Is that right? Now, I want to let you know that this is a newsflash, that I don't think anybody, once you were in God's position, would want to be there for more than 3 seconds, much less a day. Can you imagine what it'd be like to be God? You think, oh, that'd be wonderful. Imagine listening to my voice every day with all these stupid prayers that sometimes I pray. God, give me this. I'll really be happy if they give me this. And I think no one really can control anyone except yourself. And we can't really own our lives. We're only given in this life to use. Is that right? Now, the sad part about the church, and I've done some history on the church, is the fact that if the church is given the choice between power and love, what does it usually pick? Power. And if most people are given the choice between leadership and servanthood or service, 93% will pick leadership. So I want to let you know a little bit about this thing called Jesus' power. because it has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. Let's look at the first slide. Do you have a slide there? We are enamored with power, aren't we not? Let's let go of that. Slide 2. It is true that sometimes the world says you are important if you have power. Slide 3. Jesus impacts with markedly new kinds of power. Look what it says in Philippians. Though he was in the form of God, he did not regard equality or power with God something to be exploited, but he emptied himself. Do you see that? He emptied himself. He took the form of a slave or a servant, and he was born in human likeness. Next slide. Now, I want, by this little comparison, to kind of go to the next frame and saying, my right side, which will be your left side, you be the world's power, and over here you be the spiritual power. That has nothing to do with you. Just go along with me for a while, okay? Now, I think you realize that if you are of the world, you are powerful if you rule people or you rule power as far as financial or money. That is what power is. Spiritual power is when, over here, you serve everyone. Is that right? World power says, the more toys I have, the better I will be. The world power is at obtaining. Is that right? Spiritual power says, I want to give as much as I can. The world power's emphasis is on money and status and appearance and influence. Is that right? And the spiritual power over here says, I don't seek something to make me rich because that will only detract. I want to assist the poor. I want to assist those that are ostracized, that are sick, that are helpless. I want to center upon my soul. The world's power is what? It aims to build itself up, and over here the spiritual power is to promote love and forgiveness of others. Is that right? Now, the world's power tries to appease the powers and tries to make sure that everything is in order. And over here, and this I found very interesting, the spiritual power is those that really tell the truth, that speak up for the ones that are ostracized, the people that have been downtrodden. Do you find that the prophets of the Old Testament really got along with all of the people all the time? A lot of times they spoke prophecy and they didn't like that. Did Jesus live in a situation where he was in kind of a Brady Bunch kind of family? No. His brothers and sisters said, we need to take him home. He's crazy. Did he get along with the scribes and Pharisees or with the Romans? No. Sometimes when God calls us to do something, it's not like just as long as you obey the laws. Sometimes God calls us to speak up for things that are not right. Is that right? Now, the mode of operation in those in the power of the world speak flamboyant and impressiveness. And then the ones that speak of the powers of spirit are always regarding humility, anonymity. That means that you don't want your name to go along the things that you've done. You empower others and not yourself, and you give God the glory. The world says, I live for self. I am number one, and number two is with the Spirit, to live in relationship with all and even love one's enemies. Is that true? So, in review, let's look at this. Next slide, please. Was Jesus self-emptying? Was he self-giving love? Did he go the extra mile? Did he seek reconciliation where there's brokenness? Is that right? Did he try to do justice and love tenderly? Did he walk humbly with God? Where did he get his power? It goes against everything that the world says is important. He found it by following the Spirit. He was baptized, and it says, and led by the Spirit. As he exited 40 days later, it says, and full of the Spirit, does it not? It's amazing. Next slide. When we lose sight of God, does God lose sight of us? No, never. Now, I want to tell you, I just forget about the slides right now. I just want to tell you a story. I was in Africa, this place called Kenya. You know I was there. And there's a man called Jimmy. He had lost both legs. And Jimmy was out begging. But he was happy. He was whistling and he was singing. And I said, Jimmy, what makes you so happy? And he says, I dance all the time. And I was kind of like saying, you don't have any legs. How does that happen? He says, well, that's kind of rude. No, he didn't say that. It was rude. But he says, you know, every day God plays a different song. It might be the blues, it might be something, but it's always a song, and I can dance. As long as I dance with God and not against the music, it will be a happy day when it ends. And I say, what? And he says, no matter what happens, if you dance with life, if you dance with the music that you've been given, you will see God move within your life in a remarkable way. That man taught me much. A minister from Oregon going to Kenya with a man that had little, if nothing, except power of spirit. Isn't that amazing? When you look at poor people, you say, well, they don't have much of anything. They have everything. I went in to buy a suit from a friend, and I said, I'm sorry that I'm poor. I can't afford that. And the man looks at me and he says, he knows me, he's a friend. He says, don't you ever say that you are poor again. You're one of the most richest persons I know. I left there humbled because he's right. How many people can look around this room and say, if I needed help, I could call you and you would be there? How many people pray for me? I need lots of prayers. And you give that to me. You give me support. Am I rich? Are you rich? Are we powerful? Yes. It is amazing. As we allow God's Spirit to work within us, as we surrender, we begin to experience what? Transforming presence of God. And that's what Jesus did. He says, I'm going to let go and let God move within me and move and make me what I need to be. And that's why he had so much power, is the fact that when he went places, people would say, he speaks with authority. He speaks with power. Why? Is because the God Spirit was within Christ. Is that right? Do we have that same Spirit? Do we have the possibility of the same Spirit? Now, here are the questions. Next slide. And this is it. I'm just going to vary from the slides for a while. I just want to ask you a question. Is this church empowered by the Spirit? Don't answer. Don't answer yet. Is this Spirit empowered by God's Spirit? Second, what kind of power do you use? Are you empowered by God's Spirit? And if so, does that mean you and we listen and follow the direction of God? I think sometimes we do. Does that mean sometimes we have power? If we allow the Spirit to move us, are we directed in some surprising ways? Did God move in some surprising people? 3 people said yes. Yes, you know that's true. Some person I thought, that is oh my goodness, the most untalented person I know. And yet, she was able to bring 40 people to church. God moves in mysterious ways in remarkable people who you never use or think of. But Pastor, I think we've lost our vision. I don't know where God's will wants me to be. Maybe God is leading me. I would like to say, if you have a question if God's leading you, I don't think God is leading you. God will lead you to places that you don't want to go and make you do things that you say, I can't do, and you can't do them by yourself. You cannot do them by yourself if it's God's will. Why did a Baptist minister come to this Presbyterian Methodist church? I can't be a Methodist. I can't be a Presbyterian. They're not Methodist or Presbyterian, they're Christians, so just get on the job and do it. So, Will God plant a new heart and a new spirit within God's people?
Yes.
If we are open, will God make His Spirit move among us? Can we say yes?
Yes.
Now, if we have this wonderful Father who gives us all these wonderful resources that we didn't even know, do we earn it by what we did or by the grace we have? No. Is it freely given without conditions?
Yes.
You're wrong. It's not. There is one condition, and that being that we yield our hearts and our souls and our spirits to God. Is that right?
Right.
The only reason God's Spirit is going to be there is if we are open to God moving there. So, if we allow God's Spirit to work within us, is this 6? Keep going one more time. If we live and walk in the Spirit, if we love with all of our hearts and souls, if we live in the Spirit, it inspires quality of life in our relationship. Next. If we walk in the Spirit, will not guarantee. Now, this is what I'm trying to get at. So if we walk in the Spirit, will we have a calm and peaceful and happy life? No. Jesus, did you not hear? He got married and he lived in a beautiful home and he died at a very old age. He was happy with lots of money. No. And all of the disciples, they all died happy lives with 18 children. No, they all died because of what they believed. However, but, there is one thing that we receive once we allow God to live within our lives. And what is that? That is the presence of God, the power of God, and the changing of lives, which is remarkable. Now, I'll close with this. Have you ever gotten a whooping from the Lord? In the South, there was a woman that says, I hate it when I get a whooping from the Lord. And I said, what is a whooping from the Lord? And it says, well, I'm taking cookies to a neighbor down the way. And he says, take the cookies to the lady further down. And I said, no, I don't know that lady. I'm not going to take cookies to that woman. Find somebody that knows her and she can take the cookies. So she didn't take the cookies. And 5 days later, she found out the woman died. She said, I got a whooping from the Lord. I cannot do this. I know. But God through you can. Is that right? If God's Spirit is within you, is that right? So, this is what I want to say. We've received a challenge from God, and that is this. That no matter what we go up against, God says, I will be with you, and I will maintain and support you. Today we're challenged to live lives yielding to God's love. Is that right? Yes. Yielding to God's love. To be transformed by Christ's compassion and to be empowered by His sacred Spirit. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, if you're yielded to God's love, if you are actually allowing God to empower you, what will happen? What will happen? I can tell you, fear will be gone. And you say fear? Anytime when God's love is within you, in love there is no fear. Did you know that? Not only will you have no fear, but you will have passion not only for God and life, but you'll look even beyond this whole thing of power on earth, and you will be empowered to be who you are and live fully in the glory of God. May we be willing to allow this church to be empowered by the Spirit and be moved places that we've never gone before. Amen.